And whoa, look at Magoo. Magoo streaks into the...
Thorpe's got Parker boards. They lock handlebars as they go through, but Thorpe's done.
Here comes Bradshaw to the outside of Bale. He takes over the number 2 position, and Bradshaw is not done.
It was actually a 358, the bike that I rode, and we turned it into a 4-speed transmission, trying to eliminate some of the gears in it, just to have a little less weight, a little less rotating mass down there. And man, the thing was absolutely amazing. So first gear got eliminated completely. Second was my first gear, and then the bike worked so good when they would allow it to work. Well, at that time, I was one of those guys that was so confident that I could win at any given moment. And I always said I would win the 125, 250, and 500 World Championships. That's why I went over there. I wanted to do the hat trick of all 3 of them. That year, I should have done it. When we was setting the contract up at the beginning of the year, I told them, I said, we'll do everything on bonuses. I said, yeah, y'all don't owe me any money up front. I said, I want to make the bonuses so big that I'll make a lot of money, because in my mind and in my heart, I knew no one could outrun me. And I knew that no one was going to outwork me. But unfortunately, 2 months before the season started, KTM bought Husaberg. And then that's when everything kind of went south. Every time I would start getting in the lead of the World Championship, my mechanic would call and he'd tell me, he said, they're not allowing me to go this weekend. They're sending Giovanni. Be careful. And the first time I really didn't understand what was going on until they had loosened up one of the bolts in the fork broke in half at Luxembourg while I was leading, and it ended up near. I'm not going to say nearly killing me, but it broke a collarbone, a shoulder blade, and a couple of ribs, and knocked me unconscious for I don't know how long. But and then 2 weeks later, I had to ride in those conditions, which I was still in the championship hunt. And then they had another bike failure where when we pulled the cover off the ignition, you could see where they had hacksawed the shaft almost halfway in two, and then the ignition. So it was just a sabotage. So I couldn't win the title. They didn't want to pay the money, and then they wanted that new 4-stroke to win that they had just bought two months earlier. But they did. It wasn't just me. They messed with a lot of the Americans that went over there. They did not want you to win the World Championship. Going back to 1991, every time there was a drug test, my name was randomly picked. Out of 9 Italian championships, I was picked 9 times for drug tests. Out of the 12 rounds of the World Championship, I was randomly picked 6 times for drug tests. So I was so scared to put anything in my body. All I would do was drink water because I knew I was going to be drug tested every single time. And the good thing about it was we had a doctor that was with me always. So every time I went in for my drug test, the doctor would come in with me. And that way, when we peed in the cup, we made sure everything was sealed and stuff. And it was just you got used to it. They did everything they could to keep you from winning. During time scoring, I went out and put my first lap in. I come in, my mechanic said it's a good lap. I was still out of time. I didn't make it into qualifying, and everybody's looking around because everybody who had me on the clock's like, you're top 3. And it showed me like down in 20-something. So I'd go out and put another lap in,
Well, they're not talking to each other.
Well, until the last 5
James
minutes,
Marsh, number 17, beside him, the British
I was
rider.
still
As
out
the
of
ball goes up, the
qualifying.
gate drops. Here they come.
And finally, my mechanic went into where they was doing the time,
They go down
and they were trying to kick him out. And he goes, "We got times on Trampas, and he should be top 3." And they said, "Oh no, his lap times are way off." And he stood in there with his clock when I got one last lap in, and they put me up, and I can't remember where they put me up into qualifying, but which gave me a place on the gate that it you know, it was just one of them deals. They did everything they could, and then they had certain riders that was willing to try to take you out on purpose.
Trampas Parker, a man that's looking to find form this year. He'll pick up his position on the line. Bike number 1, he has got clear. Bartolini has got clear. Smits, Trampas Parker, proving very, very popular this year. And again, number 72, Bartolini is back in heat number 2. He is on the very, very expensive, almost one-off YZM 400 Yamaha. And he's in 98. Honda reported to be bringing one out as well, and I'm sure Kawasaki will follow very, very quickly. And it's wonderful to see 4 strokes back on the park. Trampas Parker getting it all together. He has got the mighty Husaberg behind him. That was Joel Smits. And they've all got this man to catch. The ever-smooth Shane King at the Italian Grand Prix. Different riding style all together on a 4-stroke. The new riders have said it's taken the time to get adjusted to the machine. The power comes on in a completely different way. Very different to riding a 2-stroke. And this is Joel Smits on the Husaberg, having a run now with Trampas Parker, the American rider. Husaberg's been around for a long, long time, as has, of course, the man that's riding it, Joel Smits. We saw him in the UK recently at Hawkston Park, and he really can put the power down very, very quickly. Opportunity to take him, and he'll want to come back very, very quickly. So King and Smits, the two of them on a charge at the moment. And then tucked in the middle of them, number 22, that's Trampas Parker. So he wants to get in on that train as well. Very often you can get caught up in that and it just drags you along. The adrenaline starts to pump and you just get caught up in a very, very quick train. And that's what Trampas Parker is doing right now. But up front, it's still Shane King doing a great job of work. Well, look at this side by side. There's going to be no brotherly love here whatsoever. Daryl King goes through on the inside past Shane, and I'm sure they'll be having a family discussion about that tonight. So Daryl King moves up, a very, very good passing maneuver there on the inside of Shane King, and that won't do him any harm whatsoever. So while Daryl King continues to pull away at the front of the pack, there is a huge race ensuing for 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 5th. All the way around the circuit, positions are changing. Joel Smits wants extra valuable points if he can get them. Shane King doesn't want to give up his particular place. Parker wants to get in with the pack as well. So Daryl King's still way out ahead, but Eckenbacher's come through to 2nd. Somebody has made a mistake. Shane King has gone missing. Trampas Parker is through to 3rd. Trampas Parker is on an absolute charge at the moment. They know that there's not much race time left.
Difficult start last week with the French track, but better for you today?
I hope so. I don't want to say anything before I get around the first turn. Let's just wait after the moto and discuss what happened.
And the 2-stroke, how competitive is it against the 4 strokes?
I think it all depends on the rider, and I wasn't the rider last week, but the bike's plenty capable of winning. I just got to give it more gas.
Well, good luck today.
Thanks a lot.
98 en la categoría de 2,5. Este año en el 500 va.
Brothers Daryl and Shane King were also looking to break their duck with a win in Asuna. Puzard knew a repeat of his win in France would put him clear in the championship. But heavy watering of the dry track made the conditions difficult. A good start would be important if a rider was to challenge for the win in race 1. Parker got that good start as he led the pack through the first corner. Parker was making up for his poor showing in France, leaving those behind him to cope with the mud. Parker was making the most of being at the front and tried his best to pull away from Demaria and Smets, who were leading the chase. Parker started to stretch out a lead, and there looked little Demaria could do to stop him. The American was clearly a master of the conditions at Osuna. Demaria had to cope with pressure from Smets. None of this concerned Parker as he blasted his way to a comfortable win, showing all the skill that had won his 2 world titles. Demaria still had Smets to cope with, but at least the Frenchman was pulling clear of Puzar in the title race. But the race win looked less certain for Parker as he was caught by Demaria and Smets. There was going to be more drama before the result was certain, as both the Frenchman or Belgian were close enough to take the race win away from the American. Demaria had tasted victory in France and wanted it here again in Spain. As he pressed hard, there looked every chance Parker would lose the lead. But the American wasn't going to give up without a real fight. Even if that meant pushing to his limit to stay in front of the Frenchman. Parker managed to pull away, and that left Demaria open to attack from Smets. The world champion made his move when he dived past going into a corner, but it ended in disaster when both he and Demaria were sent crashing to the ground. Parker became the 3rd different winner in as many races. But the American didn't allow himself an elaborate celebration. Another shot at victory, as long as he was fast out of the gate once more. A repeat looked on the cards as the American took another hole shot. But this time he had Smets and Bartolini for company. With the track drier for the second race, it was going to be harder for Parker to win again. But the American was giving it everything he had. Only for Smets to show that he wasn't going to settle for anything less than a race win this time out. And when the world champion hit the front, there looked to be little chance of the American coming back at him. With Smets through in the lead, it was Demaria's turn to put Parker under pressure. As the Belgian started to edge away, Demaria passed Parker as the drying track presented a choice of lines. But even 3rd wasn't safe as Bartolini was the next rider with Parker in his sights. Then Demaria slid off on a corner, throwing away his hard work as Parker and Bartolini went by. Smets was in a mood to win, and the mistakes of his rivals meant he was able to pull clear. Bartolini also had his sights on victory, and he was a step closer after passing Parker. That meant the American's best hope was 3rd place, but only if he didn't lose any more positions before the race ended. He was clearly struggling as both Demaria and Johansson started to close in on their 4-strokes. Smets had started the season coming off an injury and wasn't expecting to win races this early in the campaign. But there was no way the world champion was going to turn down this victory. And he celebrated in his usual exuberant fashion. Bartolini continued to pick up points, which would serve him well later in the season. Smets shared his delight with the crowd. After 4 races, Smets was the 4th winner.